Traffic Office at 2220, or Transportation Office at 2211 Washington Avenue. Roll call. Scott Damon here. Amber England. Not yet. Bonnie King. Ray Seahorn. Tyler Smith. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Recognition of individuals who wish to speak on non-agenda items. On agenda items, I'm sorry. Okay, is this item number 1 here? Okay, item number 1, presentation from McPherson and Jacobson, LLC. Okay. Okay.
Can you share screen? Can we get the Michelle's screen to be shared? Should be down there under the green things to share screen. And,
Won't let me, so hold on.
yeah.
Each microphone, the speaker, which one of each laptop, which one is louder, lower. So up, down, right now, I'm meeting is not effective.
There you go. You want me to share Michelle's screen too?
Yes, please. Okay, I'm going to start while you get ready. Just give me the thumbs up when her screen is shared. So welcome. Thank you for having us here. We want to say we really appreciate this opportunity. This is a mission-driven thing for us. We don't do this for the money. We do this because this is what we've done all our lives and all our career. And just to let you know, I was under, oops, Michelle, don't share your screen quite yet. There you go. I was under anesthesia just 3 hours ago, having a medical procedure done. So I got up and I got down here because this is important to me. And Dr. Huntoon is visiting her grandchildren on the East Coast. So this is important to us because this is an important thing for your community, for your kids, and frankly, for the country. So that's how important this is to us. I'd like to just say that I'm Dr. Stephen Louder. I was superintendent in California for 35 years. My last position was Stockton Unified. And so I had time to districts. I lived in Reading. I went to Chico State. I lived in Stockton. I was born and raised in Arcata. So most of my career was in California. Now retired, living in Vancouver, Washington, which is just across the river from Portland. And Dr. Huntoon, why don't you tell them about your illustrious career?
Yeah, so good evening, thank you. I've had a wide breadth of experience in education over the years. I am a CPA, but I also have my doctorate. I just left the position of superintendent. I was superintendent there for 6 years. For 14 years, I was an associate vice president with School Services in California, wherein I managed the search unit there for them. And so I'm currently an associate superintendent for business for a district that has 20,000 plus students. I too have been in very small districts as well as very large districts. And my time at School Services, I actually was supporting districts there in your county, as well as other districts across the state.
Great. All right, Michelle, please let's share the screen. Let's talk about this. Oh, I was going to ask someone, Corey, somebody, do you have questions for us, or do we have 15 minutes to complete?
You have 15 minutes to complete. You have 15 minutes to complete.
Okay, that's good. All right, Dr. Hunter, go ahead.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so very much for your time this evening for us to provide you with some information about McPherson and Jacobson as it relates to your search for the superintendent. And so here, one of the things that we want to keep in mind as we go through this process is that your model is preparing students for the future today. And so we're going to give you a little bit of background on McPherson and Jacobson. We are the leading national search firm. We have provided searches for districts that have been as small as 10 students and over 300,000 students, so that's quite a breadth. We also have a network of experienced consultants, over 130 in diversity backgrounds, as well as ethnicity, gender. And the one thing that we're very proud of is sustainability in leadership. And so a little bit of the statistics related to that. For candidates that are placed, 85% of them in the last 5 years are still in place after that point in time. In the last 10 years, 60%, and in the last 15 years, it's been 45%. And so just to put that in context, in California, the average time for a superintendent is anywhere from 2 to 3 years. And that has been over the last 10 to 15 years. Okay, so this again is a little bit of philosophical information about McPherson and Jacobson, and the importance for us is to ensure that you have a high quality education at your district, and ensure in order to be able to do that, we do believe that really is dependent upon quality leadership. And Dr. Mather, and if you want to talk about a little bit of the other items here on this slide.
Well, so the important thing to us, again, this is mission. We do this because it is important to us as our core mission. It's what we've done all our lives and want to continue to add to the greater good. We want to make sure we have quality leadership, and because of that, because of our process, we get a good fit. We do not have a stable of candidates that we shuffle through in place. It's about what you need, what your wants are, the characteristics, the qualities, and experiences that are necessary to be the leader in your district. And that's why people come and stay. It works well, and it's about getting the best fit. We respect your uniqueness. We want to make sure that the process is your process. We have a protocol, but it's not about us, it's about you. So we can modify the process to meet your particular needs. The one key needs is we want to hear from all voices. We want to hear from your community, your teachers, your staff, your students, your administration. We want to hear from everybody. So you can get that information and use that in your deliberation process to hire the best person possible. Dr. Hunter.
Thank you. So it's also important to note that we are not hiring superintendents in our partnership with you. The district hires the superintendents. We are here to support you as a partner to ensure that you have a candidate that is going to be the best fit for you. And so again, the protocols that Dr. Lauer mentioned, we do have those protocols in place, but again, we want to make sure that this process works for you. And so we will continue to work through that process with you.
And the last one, we're recruiters of talent. We don't hire people. We bring you highly competent, qualified people that fit your profile. So let's talk about the investment. Base fee is $13,500 with a not to exceed at $250. And for that, you get all the phases 1 through 5. Other groups do, but they don't have the longevity or the national reach that we do. You get 4 weeks in EdCal, 60 days in EdJoin. You get a full day of in-person educational partners or stakeholder meetings where we get the chance to listen and talk to the people in your community, your staff, your students. So we gather that information, which helps us make the fit and also helps us sort through those candidates. We'll do online educational partners input surveys, which is usually a survey monkey. Some districts have something else that they want to use, but that information is very valuable to the board as well. You'll see a video interview of the candidates when we provide you with a short list. So you'll see the paperwork, you'll see a complete list of everyone who applied, and we'll stand for questions as to why individuals were not brought forward, be considered for interviews. And we'll tell you a lot about what we've heard from not just our references, but from the others that we are aware of in their communities, people they've worked for in the past. And again, through our network of 130 people across the country, we have a great depth of knowledge all over California and all over the country as well. We'll do a criminal financial credential verification background check for the candidates chosen by the board for interviews, and the travel expenses for the consultants for the scheduled trips to the district are also covered, as well as the office expenses for home office. In the end, it's not about the money, it's about you guys feeling comfortable with the people who are doing your search. So I know a little bit about your district. I know that the student performance could be higher. The dropout rate was up 2 years ago. It's down again, around 7. We know that's not where you want it to be because 7%, you don't want there to be any dropouts. We know the performance could be higher. It takes good quality leadership and collaboration with your staff and students to make that happen. So the expense part of it is not the big thing. It's about what you're getting. You're getting us 24/7 if you need us. You'll have our cell phone numbers, you'll have our emails. And since we've both been superintendents, we understand that sometimes the calls come at 8 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. And we're going to be able to pick up and get back to you as soon as possible if you have questions. This is important to us. We give you the whole thing. We give you our dedication and our knowledge, our years of knowledge. Thank you.
So there are 5 phases in our search process. And in the first phase, and this is also on page 7 in the proposal that you received. So we're first going to work with the board to develop the characteristics. And again, this comes from the board. You know best what you're looking for in your next superintendent. It will include the timeline and advertising venues. We've given you a couple that we typically include, but there may be some others that you would like to include as well. And again, it's that flexibility in our protocols. In phase 2, we will we'll turn to the stakeholder input. So the stakeholder input is going to be your community. It's going to maybe it's your mayor, chief of police. It could also be your parents, your staff, your students, your administration. And then develop the advertising materials and then recruit those candidates. In phase 3, we will evaluate and check references of any applicants that are applying and develop those interview questions. And that will also, again, include the board. In phase 4, that's the selection of the applications to be interviewed. That is done by the board. We will help to facilitate that. And then interviewing the candidates. And then candidates potentially meeting with stakeholders. Again, this is another area that majority of districts do this, but it doesn't require all districts to do that. Again, we will work with you on that. And then the selection of the new superintendent, as we indicated, that is to be done by the board. And then phase 5, we establish superintendent performance objectives. We want to ensure that superintendent that is coming on is going to be successful. And then our guarantee that Dr. Levin had mentioned.
Oh, I didn't say that if the person leaves within 2 years for any reason whatsoever, it could be a family issue or whatever, we we come back and do the search for just cost. We don't make any more money, just any expenses the district has to pay for that, that's it. That would be advertising and travel, basically. We're so confident, we almost never pay off on a guarantee. Sometimes things happen. Thank you.
Thank you. So responsibilities, just as in the workplace, we want to ensure that we have clear responsibilities. And again, you will see this in the proposal. It lays out very clearly what the responsibilities of the consultants from Pearson and Jacobson, and also the responsibilities of the board and the district. And so that is something, for example, one board member would be the main contact, and typically that is the board chair. However, that could be something that you as a board determines, and that is the point of contact, and typically that's going to be the superintendent's administrators.
Follow the process works well. Transparency is our key. We want to make this an open process. Some will tell you that you don't get applicants if there's a transparent process. I would argue that that's not the case. I've been working this formula since 2014. I've never lost candidates because people's names are known. Having said that, they aren't known until they're selected for interviews, number one. Number two, if the board does not want an open or transparent process, we can provide that as well. We just prefer it because we think in the end, the more people that are part of this process have some voice in the process, not selection, not ranking, they get a chance to weigh in on strengths and weaknesses. That leads to the stability of leadership. That leads us to the successful matching of the candidates. That high involvement of your educational partners, from your staff, your students, your administrators, to your community, that's what makes this work. That's why we have a guarantee. And we have a price match. If another company wants to come in and wants to do it for $11,500, we'll match that price for the same scope of work. We'll do no more than they would do for the same price that they have proposed. We do a lot of work. We provide a lot of service. We think we have a very fair price, and it works very well for our districts.
Yeah, the one thing that I would also mention, going back to the beginning, in terms of the board's involvement, is really important as we look at developing these characteristics, because that really is going to drive much of the advertisement, the recruitment. That really lays out very clearly what the board is looking for. So that's important. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Mather.
No, I was just going to say that. Any questions or comments? If not, we'll just wrap it up. Are there any questions?
Yeah. Question. Hear me okay?
Yes, Mr. Stapleton? Yes.
Yeah. We developed a set of criteria that we would like to hold strictly to, and then also must-haves and would like to have. Get those to you?
Yes, absolutely. The sooner we get them, the better off we would be in the process, because that gets us moving on trying to develop brochures and develop the advertising criteria so that we are attracting the right people.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. 13,500 with
I know
no
we're
more.
over by 3 minutes, but we started with
Are you muted?
glitch there. We appreciate you offering this opportunity to present to you. We would really like to work with you. Our community had a process. Is there a comment there?
Yeah, I just have
We
a question.
Very successful process, and it works. It's worked well for almost 1,000 searches, and we do provide the best fit, and those people come and stay. And that's what you're looking for. Stability of leadership is great for kids and teachers and your community. So other than that, do you plan to make a decision tonight?
Yeah, the question I had, 13,500 with no more than 18,250. You said the only. Yeah.
I missed the question.
It kind of trailed off and stopped.
I guess my question is the difference between 13,500 and 18,250. Did you say that was just gonna be travel and expenses, increasing expenses? Is that the only difference?
So the base pay is 13.5. That includes, if you're looking at page 20, it lays it out. The total not to exceed includes all of the expenses. Now, it may be less if we travel less. It may be more if we have to travel more. Who knows what the airline flights are going to be, or the travel costs are going to be. If you need more than 1 day in the district, that's going to cost a little bit too. So we're trying to save the district money. We're not in this to make a lot of money. We don't make a lot of money, and that's, we don't do it for the money. We do it because we provide that service.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Huntoon or Dr. Louder?
Is that it?
I have a question. So looking at your steps, how long would you foresee to go through the process where we would be ready to decide on the superintendent?
It takes, you want 8 weeks to advertise, and then there's 2 weeks to do the vetting, so there's 10 weeks, and then it's going to take you a week or so to do the interviews. There's 4, let's just say that's 12 weeks, 3 months.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Huntoon or any other questions for Dr. Louder or Dr. Huntoon? Okay, well, thank you. We appreciate your time.
You bet, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with the board. Again, we feel it's our mission, and if nothing else,
Hold on, we have one more question.
One more thing.
yes.
How do we get documents to you that we've already worked on and we'd like to have?
So we have emails that you can send to us. We have a Dropbox account. You can upload them into Dropbox. There are lots of different ways of doing that, and it saves time by doing it electronically rather than mail.
I got it right in front of me. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You need Zoom? No, hold on, do you need Zoom?
Thank you.
Do you need Zoom there, sir? Yeah.
No, I don't.
Okay, so you can shut Zoom down if
Yeah.
you would like.
And we can knock off the feedback.
No one yet.
No.
So this is Dr. Rich Fisher from Leadership Associates.
Yes, I am. And thanks for having me. Beautiful drive up. I live about an hour and 20 minutes from here. And so I've spent a lot of time in Oroville, done a couple of other searches here. And so I always look forward to this time of year when the blossoms are starting on the almonds. I guess they're almonds. They're almonds in this county. I know. They're almonds if you eat them, and they're almonds if you grow them, right? Isn't that how it works? Yeah. Anyway, I'm Rich Fisher, and my partner Tom Chagnon got caught in LA traffic coming up from San Diego. He was making a presentation yesterday, so he won't be on with us. But he's a great guy, and county superintendent in Stanislaus County for many years, retired and joined us about 4 years ago. I have had a wonderful career, 40 years as an educator, enjoyed almost every bit of it, didn't have a pandemic, got pretty lucky on that, and worked from teacher to vice principal, just up the steps, and 19 years as a superintendent. I joined the firm about 7 years ago and have done about 40 searches now. So I'm starting my time. I have my timer here. I'm going to go through this in kind of a different way than normally because you're really on a timeline. I was told I got 15 minutes. And so I just want to say that most of our searches, there are 3 major firms. The search looks pretty much the same. The timeline looks pretty much the same. We basically start, once we have a contract with you, we'll set up very quickly a meeting with you. At that time, we'll set up the timeline for the year, for the search, the parameters for the search, what you want us to do, because it's really your search. We work for you. We'll work on the characteristics that you want to see in your next superintendent. What are the qualities? What are the characteristics that you want to see in your next sup? And get ourselves really organized. So that'll be the first meeting. Hopefully a week to a week and a half from now. Be perfect. Then right after that, we want to do our stakeholder input. And it's just a very important part. We do it by Zoom and we do it in person. We include, especially in high school districts, we include students from each high school, as many as we can get to talk to us about, because they have opinions. They know what leadership looks like. We really want to involve the kids in this. Many of them don't have any idea what a superintendent does. Most people don't. So, but the reality is good leaders have characteristics that most of us recognize. We also, so we'll do all of the gathering. And if it takes us 2 or 3 days, it takes us 2 or 3 days. We don't charge any extra for going over 1 day. Some firms do. But we'll be here as long as we need to be. We'll develop an executive summary that we'll present to you. It'll give you an overview of all that we learned. It'll be valuable as we help you transition the new superintendent in, because that's information about the district. What are the strengths? What are the challenges? What are we looking for in a superintendent? I was so impressed with your website. I like your website. I don't know if you like your website, but I like your website because I was able to go on there and see a lot of kids' stuff. And I was really excited to see how many different activities, hands-on activities you highlighted. And I'm really impressed with the Hall of Fame. I want to go see the Hall of Fame. I didn't get here in time today, but I've got to go see the Hall of Fame. I'll be here tomorrow, by the way, because I'm doing the Palermo search, and tomorrow we're doing candidate selection. So I might get here early and have Corey or somebody show me the Hall of Fame. I'd like that. So we're going to work through the whole process. We're going to be coming to you in about the end of March or early April with candidate review, candidate selection. And I don't know how many candidates we're going to get. We got 10 good candidates for Palermo L. High school districts, this will be the 4th high school district that I've done a search for. Typically don't draw as many candidates, but we only need one. I'm sure we'll have many, many more than that because we have such a wide net that we're able to cast. But so we'll do all the background checking. Probably, maybe it'll be early April. We'll have the candidate review with you. We provide you recommendations, just like a superintendent's required to provide you recommendations on things. We should be required to provide you recommendations on who we think looks like a match. Most of the candidates are qualified on paper, but how many look like a real match? So we'll provide you kind of a ranking of different candidates. The first tier candidates, and probably 5 or 6, are people that look like a real good match. There's things in their resume, the background that they've had, their writing, their ability to write, their references. The second tier, folks that are qualified, but probably not a good match, but qualified. And the third tier are those that we failed to discourage. We probably should have told them this isn't the right search for you to be in. Once we're done with that, hopefully within a week to 10 days, we have the interviews. We'll provide everything you need for the interviews, but you'll decide which questions you want to ask, how you want to ask it. Do you want to have a community panel or not a community panel? Some firms don't do community panels. We found a good way to do it that I think works for the board really well, but doesn't put you in a tough position. They're not telling you who to hire, but we've got a good process that seems very satisfying to the people who are involved. So you go through the interviews. If you select a candidate, which we know you will because we've done this a lot of times, if you decide you want to do a validation visit or validation phone calls, we'll help you. We'll set those up for you, make sure that you have the right connections to the right people. And so then I think it's May. Well, with your first board meeting in May, you should be appointing a new superintendent. And it has to be appointed at actually at a regular board meeting too, one of your regular scheduled ones that you decided on in December. And there we have that part. And then of course we will follow up. We'll help you transition the new person in. We'll be glad to do a board superintendent workshop, roles and responsibilities, help get that person off the ground. If coaching seems like the right thing for that person, and I assure you that it does, as most superintendents, even if they're experienced, need some coaching, we can do that. We can provide a nice transition for you. So that's pretty much the process, and it's not much different than anybody else's. But what is different is kind of us. You know, we're just an interesting firm. We're an independent firm. We're not connected with any national firm. We're not connected with any organization. Been around since 1996 and have done 650 searches plus. I mean, we're finishing them up all the time. This year we did last year we did 2/3 of all the searches in the state, actually 68% of all the searches, because people get to know us and they know that we do a good job and we're reliable and we're here. We'll be here whenever you need us to be here. I can get here in an hour and 20 minutes with a nice drive. But some of the unique things that might not have shown up in the proposal, we have a website that has 1,000 subscribers. 1,000 subscribers. And they're all people who are interested in that website for one reason. It has all our jobs on it. And so when we signed a contract with you, or you approve a contract for us, the next day, 1,000 people will get a notice that Oroville Union High School District has an opening for a superintendent. Well before that ad shows up in EdCal, we'll have 40 to 50% of our applications or our applicant requests. So the website has been a game changer because we push it out anytime there's a change. Once we write up your position description and we'll put it on the website, it goes that we push that out to them. So there are 3 or 4 times during the search before the end of the application time that they're going to get a notice from us reminding them that there's this great district that they ought to be looking at. It's one of the things that separates us from other firms. But the real secret sauce is our executive assistants. I mean, we are often a little more expensive than other firms because we have 3 executive assistants. And each of them has been a superintendent's secretary at one time, superintendent's executive assistant. And their primary job is to make sure Paula doesn't go crazy. Because the one person in the school district that's going to do the most work in this district will be Paula. A search is a very labor-intensive thing. So our executive, in this case, I think it'll be Serena. And Serena is longtime superintendent's secretary, who had been with us for some time. She has all the protocols, all the language for agenda items, everything we need. How you set up the interviews, how you set up the stakeholder program, all of that stuff. And she'll be in constant contact anytime there's a need. And Paula has any need, she can call Serena. Believe me, she can call her anytime, day or night. Serena doesn't seem to sleep. And we have found that to be districts love that, and especially the district office staff, because it really cuts down on their pressure. We also have this a portal that we'll provide for you 3 or 4 days before before you're going to have the candidate review to decide who you're going to interview. You'll be given confidential read-only access to all of the applications. So you'll be able to see everybody's application before we have that meeting. So you'll be able to hone in on who you think might be the best candidates. You'll also be able to see in advance our recommendation. So, well, Rich recommends this person, Rich and Tom recommend this person, but I like somebody down here in tier 2. I think we ought to look at that, and we'll have that conversation then in the candidate review meeting, candidate selection time. And it's your search. I mean, this isn't about us. What we want you to do is interview the people you want to interview. Typically, it'll be 5. Sometimes it's 4. But you don't want to go with too many interviews or you just go crazy. You can't remember who you saw by the end of the day. So the portal is another way we separate ourselves because most firms don't do the portal. And we have an executive leadership division. And that's a division that does training, coaching, workshops, board workshops. That's a separate division we started about 4 years ago. And it's a game changer also because those of us that have been trained in all of these processes are available to you if you need anything. But also, it's a great way for us to meet potential superintendent candidates because we have about 300 superintendents who attend our workshops, including the one in the summer. We have a summer institute that is free. The new superintendent comes on, we'll let them know the summer institute dates. They can come to San Diego, become part of the summer institute for free. So it won't, no cost to you at that. So those are kind of the ways we're different. We also are very independent. We don't work for any big firm. We don't work for a national firm. We don't work for any organization. We are independent and able then to customize things for you that maybe are a little bit more organized than some of the other firms. And you can tell from our proposal that we're highly organized. We also are really flexible and able to work with you in any way you want. So I'm going to quit. Let me see how I do. Oh, I can't see my timer. But I think I beat the 15 minutes. Any questions? And by the way, you are surrounded by districts we've worked with. I mean, Red Bluff, Fall River, Plumas, Wheatland, Mary's, Woodland, Williams, Colusa, and next door, Oroville City. I did the search for Oroville City about 4 years ago. And tomorrow, as I said, I'm going to be in Palermo. So I really would like to make this 3 for 3. Because I think I know Oroville pretty well, and I'd love to work with you guys. So, any questions? Oh, by the way, our fee is higher at the base price, but it's the only price. We used to charge like a base price, so let's say in this case, 15,000, and then, but not to exceed 19,000. Well, we found people didn't like the not to exceed part because there was always going to be bills that came after. So we decided, we did away with that about 5 years ago and said, one fee, no additional charges. Whatever we need to do, we will do. If we need to print books for you, we'll print books for you. If we need to stay in hotels because you have a tight schedule, you'll never get a bill for any of that. So you're going to pay us one fee, $16,500, which is about what we charged Oroville City about 4 years ago. So inflation hasn't hit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? I know you got a busy schedule, but
You were talking about the stakeholders. You guys come in personally in your career.
I'm sorry. I'm not hearing very
That's
well.
okay. I have a quiet voice.
Oh,
You talked about stakeholders
Yes.
coming in and interviewing stakeholders. Are you here in town and you interview some various people, or could you just expand on that process?
Oh, sure. Well, we'll work with Paula and we'll work with you to find, and Corey, to find out who we should invite to come. But we'll do it in a couple of ways. We'll just come sit in a room, and there'll be a schedule. People can come in on that schedule and talk to us. There'll be some open time. We may we'll probably do a community forum, an evening forum. We'll just be here. Whoever wants to come can come and share their perspective. We'll allow them to come on Zoom. The high school students, I was a high school district superintendent. I was a high school principal. I was a high school district superintendent. I want to go to the high schools and meet with kids from the high school. I mean, that's what we're all about, isn't it? And so we'll be here. Tom has a place up in Almanor. So any excuse he has to drive near, it's on his way. And every once in a while he takes me. So anyway, but we'll be here for that. But also a lot of people like to be on Zoom. And I think I forgot to mention that we have an online survey. And so there's an online survey. Actually, it gathers more data than anything everything else we do because it's so convenient. We can do it in multiple languages, whatever suits your need. Typically, it'll be Spanish and English. And so that'll come out, that'll basically start right about the same time we start doing the stakeholder work, a little bit before that. It'll be up for probably a week and a half. Others? Well,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. And Tom, disappointed, he's a bit of a cowboy, and so he likes an opportunity to wear his Roy Rogers tie. So, you'll love Tom. He's a lot of fun. By the way, we do have a lot of fun. It's our job.
Thank you. You gonna stick around? I'm from San Diego. He's gonna pop up. Good place.
Just down, go to the sides, up into
Right.
go back.
Why don't we make it bigger so people can see it? I can put that little slideshow up for me.
So this is Dr. Nicole Assisi from Thrive, and her partner Shelly Kurt will be in the district tomorrow, meeting with both LP and Orville. They've already met with Prospect, and then they will meet with the steering committee tomorrow. And then, so I wanted her to come in and give an update on the process so far.
It's really good to see you all. I've had such a lovely time talking to so many people in your community, and I'm excited to report back. Shelly wanted to be here. She's stuck at the airport, so you don't get to see her until tomorrow. But hopefully, I think you're streaming this meeting, and I saw there's 2 people watching. One of them would be my 4-year-old who misses me, and so Dad put him like on YouTube to listen, and the other one's Shelly. So she'll text me if I say anything wrong. But, oh, this is not working. Oh, wait. Okay, got it. So if you remember, there was 3 phases to our work. The first was really to understand the context of talking to stakeholders, identifying some of the local trends as well as the global trends that we are facing and that are impacting your work. And then the second phase was really to shape that vision based on the input that we've collected. We've talked a lot about the portrait of a graduate. I, fresh off the press, have some copies of that for you. And then really the next phase moving forward from tonight is really to co-design what that path is going to look like. And we'll work with obviously whatever search firm you select to make sure that onboarding is smooth and there's no information lost, and happy to share some of the data that we've collected to date. So looking at the 3 phases, it's really hard for me to sit. I keep wanting to get up. I might get up. Is that okay? Oh, but I need the microphone. That way. No, am I good? You can hear me fine? Exactly. So if you remember the first part, understand the need, out of that came driving questions that I have for us tonight to review, and then to look at some of the future trends. I have all the slides in here. You have the slide deck. We'll make it available to you. So depending on how the conversation goes, and I really want this to be a conversation, we may not review all those slides, but you have the opportunity to. Am I projecting enough? You need me to take the microphone?
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood.
No, that's okay. Look at that. Now I feel like Vanna. I like it. So the next part where we are right now was then to look at what are some of the gaps, go through the portrait of a graduate, do some site visits again, talk to staff, and then, as I mentioned, co-design what's next. And here are the driving questions that we came up with, which was how do we create high schools in Oroville that inspire and prepare students for great futures? What really came up a lot for the young people we talked about and the staff was sort of what future are we preparing students for? How do we make this work, this community, this district sustainable? There was a lot of conversation around sustainability, especially as a smaller district, right? Limited capacity, limited staff. How do we really maximize the impact people can have? How do you redesign the student experience and the staff experience to make people love being at Oroville Union High School District, and then create schools where students and staff feel seen, they have a sense of belonging, and they're really proud to be here. As a reminder, we had a chance to interview 4 board members. Tyler, we haven't had a chance to meet, so hopefully we'll get to connect. We talked to 6 members of the leadership team, actually 7. I didn't update that, John, when you came on board. We talked to 59 staff members at one campus and 62 staff members at the other campus, plus we had a staff meeting with the folks at Matt's campus as well. 832 students replied from Oroville on the survey, 58 students from Los Plumas. We talked to 98 families from one campus, 25 from another. This is through surveys and in-person meetings. And community members at large, I think there was close to 60, let me actually look. It was 55 folks, as well as some elected officials in the community and business members. So we've been talking to a lot of folks. And tonight will all be about sharing kind of what we learned from those people and how that moves the work forward. So we did the community-wide survey. As you remember, a survey went out that was in English, Spanish, and Hmong. We did campus visits to all 3 of your campuses. We actually also went to the community day school, so 3.5. Did focus groups with staff and students, and one-on-one interviews with staff, students, parents, community members. And through all of that, look at that, we've got some pictures. I like that every picture I had, Ray was smiling. He was just like, oh, he's happy. Oh, look, there you are. So we, again, that first top picture, that was our student meeting. We had great conversations with students at all 3 campuses and really heard from that. As Rich mentioned, students have opinions about what their education should look like, what leadership looks like. And based on that, we try to find what are these future trends? What are the patterns that we're noticing? What is really important for young people? And the first one really was the trends impacting school operations, right? Communication with stakeholders has increased. There's an increased demand on mental health support. There's an increased opportunity in personalized professional development that folks mentioned about, like, how are we leveraging these things? Staffing shortages came up. The opportunities that exist right now statewide around community schools, how Oroville might really make use of some of the community schools funding that currently exists. And also naming the enrollment shifts that we're noticing, not just in Oroville, but across the state and really across the nation. Families have choice and will vote with their feet. And it came up in our parent meetings where parents said, well, you know, one of my kids goes to this school, but my other high school students, I drive down the road to go to another school. And so that came up. We also looked a lot at global trends, right? Like, what are the skills that are needed? And I won't read all these to you. Some of these are captured in your portrait of a graduate that we're going to look at. Job markets, we did some research around what are the changes in jobs, right? You look at here are the emerging jobs. Look at that AI. ChatGPT did not create my slides, but there's a lot of artificial intelligence, big data, sales, marketing. All of those jobs are rising and declining, right? Like, we see a lot of clerical type work, not as buzzing anymore. And so, right, how do we look at the changes in Oroville and how Oroville is evolving through the lens of the jobs that are available for young people? These are some of the top jobs and some labor market information. Again, I won't read it to you, but it basically shows the same things that the previous slide showed, right? Science, technology, and healthcare jobs are all on the rise. And there's increase in the need for mental health supports. I actually just was looking at some national data today that small school districts like ours here have some of the lowest access to mental health and supporting students because of workforce shortages. And I know that your campuses, right, have really tried to provide increased mental health services to students. So how do we leverage that to inspire students for future jobs, future work? Yeah. Big increase in STEM. And so if these are the jobs of the future, right, how are we preparing students today? How do we make sure that students that graduate OUHSD are ready for the jobs, ready for the skills? How do we communicate in such a way that families know what their options are, that students are engaged? So through all that kind of high level summary, there's a lot. Let's just take a breath. I feel like I've been talking at you so fast. Before I go to the stakeholder engagement overview, any questions about sort of the global and national trends as we did research, as we looked at job markets locally and beyond? Anything there? Okay. Well, this is the fun stuff anyway. So we talked to students, and what students loved, no surprise, staff, their friends. They actually really liked the school spirit and the community. They love and were worried about, the freedom of open campus. It still exists in some places, not in other places, but they want you to know that they really love it. I promised them I would tell you. They love the diversity. So a lot of students talked about one of the things that they love about their community is just that there are all sorts of people that live in this community. They actually liked, students said that they loved the small town feel. They liked that this was a community, that people were connected. They liked the connection to nature. And they really loved the food trucks. I don't know what happened with food trucks, but as we were talking, they're not yours. They love when the food trucks show up, Paula. I'm just gonna, and you see this, one of the Oroville High School students said, is what I love about my school is how friendly the teachers are. It's easy to work with them and ask for help when it's needed. So no surprises there. This is how the various students described the school. Now, I know the word, so the bigger the word, the more often kids used it. And I don't want anyone to worry that boring is kind of big, because remember, they're still teenagers. So they have a lot of wisdom and they also have a lot of feelings. So they feel that school is cool, nice, good, small, but they also thought it was loud and boring. But I thought it was really cool. If you look at how Prospect students describe their school, it just really warmed my heart. They said it really helps that, they also said there was drama. Again, no surprises when you ask students. And the community day school actually felt that it was a safe, helpful place. So this is from the students who filled out these surveys. When they marked, this is where I'm from, this is how they describe themselves. Student suggestions and concerns. They wanted more life skills and future vision. They wanted to learn how to do their taxes. It came up over and over. It's not even tax season. And they were like, we need to learn how to do our taxes. I was like, you and me both, friend. Banks, credit cards, resumes, jobs. If it had to do with them getting a job, they really wanted more opportunities to engage in that work. So as we look at, right, moving forward, how do we go from this point where we currently are to the future that you all are creating and envisioning? Students really want applicable job skills. They want also a clearer college pathway. They said, I wish there was a clearer way that our staff informed us what classes are needed for college, what grades I need. Now, it's not that these things aren't happening, because I bet if you ask the counselors, they say, I always say this, like they know it, it's written down, but this is what students said they wanted, right? So this is not as an absolute that it doesn't exist. But students said, like, these are the things, if we could improve our school, right? More food trucks and more information on how to go to college. And, some students mentioned ROP. They wanted more languages. They wanted to do more community service and learn about coding. So again, oh, and I didn't mean to skip over that they wanted school to feel safer. They said, we really wish there was less fighting, stricter discipline, bullying. They were concerned about LGBTQ students, bathroom issues. But again, they had an idea of what they wanted to look like. Similarly, here's what parents said. Small town. It's what people love about Oroville, right? Like the reason people want to be here is because it's a small town. Staff cares about kids. There's school spirit. There's diversity, right? Like diversity came up over and over again as something to be celebrated that people are excited about. And they love that the community supports each other. When they described your school, they talked about community, caring, spirit. It was safe. They talked about pride. They talked about like small and clean. These are the things that people said they loved about your schools. And parents also had some suggestions on how to make the school better. The issue of parity came up. So this idea of equal treatment and equal access across both campuses. There was this feeling from families at any of the campuses that the grass was greener on the other side. That there is not just, they felt, interestingly enough, they felt like it wasn't one system. They felt like Oroville does things the Oroville way, Las Plumas does things the Las Plumas way, but what's the Oroville High School Union School District way? So that was what families wanted. Career skills, again, it came up in every stakeholder meeting when we talked to community members, students, parents, career pathways, clear about how do I get a job when I leave here? What are the skills I need to be gainfully employed? A clear focus on life skills. How do I become a good person who does their taxes, who, how do we give students those experiences? Parents' suggestions were how can Oroville create internships, community service opportunities, SEL and well-being, so social emotional learning and well-being, suicide prevention, anti-bullying, those things. And then a request for more drama choir, ROP again, languages came up as well. And then there was staff. Your staff said that your community is fun, caring, diverse. They also said that there was some challenges and that sometimes it felt, again, the bigger the words, the more often they showed up. But again, staff loved that this is a small town. And I think that's really interesting because I think sometimes when we work with small districts, small communities, they really try to be a big city, but your community actually loves that you're a small town. And so how do you keep the small town? They loved how resilient the staff is and how resilient the community is. And they said that one of the LP staff members said that there's a sense that we're in this together. There's a great well of resilience in this community. I know. I'm telling you, I did not edit these out. I thought you should hear what people said. They said it was smelly and chaotic at times. So, and again, like all the survey data, we are giving back to you what came up. Nobody can blame me that I didn't say it how it was. Staff also had suggestions. Hopefully you're noticing a theme in these, which is staff, these are teachers. So instead of kind of career stuff, they talked about like deeper hands-on learning, like, right, how do you get kids to do the stuff that they need to do? They said college and, oh, I just touched it. Okay. They wanted college and career. I thought this was really interesting. They said that at Oroville, in the district, we talk about college or career as though like people go to college for like a living. Like that's just that's kind of what I did, by the way. So this is like, some people just keep studying and never leave college. But staff really wanted the entire district to look at preparing students for college and career. That every kid graduates being ready to go to college and being ready to be gainfully employed, and that both of those can happen at the same time. Like the students, they wanted there to be sort of a life skills component, deeper hands-on learning, and they really felt that there was some work to be done around culture, community, and safety, right? How do we make schools feel safer for young people? And the last part of our work together, right, will really be, okay, well, how do you operationalize that? How do you do that? What could you do to make schools feel safer? What moves might make schools feel less safe? Some of that involves making some decisions that I was talking to a friend earlier today, and we were talking about the fact that, like, you know, when you're in the middle of the street, you get run over both ways. So there's some opportunities to choose and make some decisions about what the next steps are, because, you know, if you don't make them and you sort of just stand in the middle of the road, you'll get run over both ways. So we'll talk about some of those decision points that we have before us. And I'm always happy to give you my opinion, but my job is to share back to you what we found. And so I'll try to share it without an opinion. But if at any point you want my opinion, just ask. So out of all that, the global trends, the local trends, talking to students, talking to parents, talking to community members, here are the 10 trends that we identified. And I'll let you look at them and read them unless somebody would like me to read them to you. Okay. Yeah. So it's great. I think you were like, Nicole, you could have not talked for the last 20 minutes and just shown us the slide. But I wanted to walk you through all the data. So basically, this is kind of what it seems to sum up to, minus comments about the bathroom and the food trucks. Like IQ is the intellectual part, and EQ is the emotional part. So like, how do you, emotional quotient. So learning how to be a kinder, better human. Like, how do we not just create smart kids, but how do we grow and educate kind humans? Thank you. Other questions? It's a lot there. So out of that, so we did all that work before, and then we came up with two things, right? One is that, like, we found that there was a strong aspirational hope. Like, people in Oroville, like all of it, from the cabinet level down to like the student, the parents, everyone in between really knows what they wish would change in Oroville, right? They all had similar hopes, identified similar trends. Out of that, we created this portrait of a graduate, which I'll hand out. What we stumbled upon that I think was not a surprise, but just something that was more present than we had expected, were these system-wide value tensions. So there were these points of contention or points of opportunity to make a decision that I think we find ourselves at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the portrait of a graduate, and then I want to share with you some of the tensions that we identified, because these tensions will be barriers to you moving forward, right? So if you think about, there was the research we did. The next step is we found these trends, and then we projected into the future, and we said, when students graduate, here's what we want them to know and be able to do. Well, in between, here's what we want students to know and be able to do, and this is what we learned. There are all these steps, right? There are system changes. There are changes we may want to make to what the day looks like, what the campus looks like, what the community looks like, how we train teachers, you were joking around the smelly component, right? Like how we clean, whatever it might be. But there are sort of steps and tasks that need to happen between identifying what we want for students in the future and how we support students, and what changes need to happen in order for this to become a reality. So that is the next part, and I will hand these out. Oh, are you willing to help me, Corey? That would be wonderful. Thank you. Everyone can have one. Yes, it'll be on here. You need to do the little zippity tab. There you go, that side. So again, in order to come up with this, we had the surveys, but we also worked with staff to identify what does the Oroville graduate need to do. And we created this portrait of a graduate. And you remember I came to talk to the board and we said, the portrait of the graduate really is like your why. It is what we're working towards and why we're all here every day. And what we came up with, it's the summary that's on top of your paper. And ultimately what came out, workshopping all the goals and needs and opportunities, is that the Oroville Union High School district graduate is a reflective and growth-oriented learner who continually develops and applies their skills, both in school and beyond, in the community. And the graduate is a critical thinker, a reflective community member, and a successful contributor. They are someone who has a job and who can sustain their well-being. And then we came up with, and we got feedback from teachers. We workshopped this with the steering committee. These are the check boxes that you see in front of you. So I'm going to let you read that and not talk while you're trying to read. It's the same thing that's on here. Thank you. Did you get one?
Are we just looking at the critical thinker part now?
Sorry?
Just read the critical thinker.
Read the whole
part now.
thing. I think this is just to where we came from. We did the research. We found the trends. We projected into the future what we want students to know and be able to do. So look at this whole piece. You look like you're going to say something, Scott.
It's great. Just hope you have the how.
Well, that is the final part of this, right? And in order to get to the how, remember I said that we came across some value tensions, right? There was some like places where people were being pulled into different directions, and so that's where we're heading next. But any questions about this? And John and Corey, like, please chime in. You were part of all of these meetings and getting to this point. And I feel like I've been talking a lot. So if nothing else, like, add some extra voice into the room. No, I think that's
Is that the roadblock you're talking about?
correct. So when you look at kind of how do we move forward, right? We came up with 6 different kind of value tensions where we can give you suggestions how to move forward, but you sort of need to tell us the priority point, right? And so when you think about value tensions, first of all, they exist everywhere. Like there's nothing bad about a value tension, right? Like if you think about dinner tonight, there's nothing wrong with proteins and there's nothing wrong with vegetables, but you sort of got to like, some parents are like, I got to make sure my kid eats some protein, or you want a whole balanced meal, but sometimes you need to say this goes in spot number 1, this goes in spot number 2. This one is more important. It's that whole idea of if you stand in the middle of the road, you get run over both ways. And what we really found is that there was this dissonance, this disconnect that existed when we asked folks, how are you living into your mission and your vision? How are you moving forward? What is most important? What is the next step? People would say, well, it could either be this or it could be this other path. And Shelley says, that's right. I like it, Shelley. Thank you. Thank you. We feel you. And during the course of our engagement, we found a couple of value tensions, and they're just going to be a barrier. If they go unchecked, if you don't decide which one of these when you're just going to forever stand in a tug of war and nothing is going to move forward. You'll be in this exact same spot 5 years from now, and you have another consultant in front of you, or maybe you'll still see my face with a lot more gray hair. We're going to go, okay, how are we going to move forward? So in order to move forward, let's go through these. It was, how do you define success? There was a lot of tension between whether success was collaborative or whether it was more competitive. So what I mean by that is, is it better for all of us to win, or is it better for an individual to win? At times there was this like scarcity mindset around, I have to fight for this staff member, I have to fight for this resource, because if I don't fight for it, then the other campus is going to get it. Or if this classroom teacher doesn't get it, then another classroom teacher would get it. And some people thrive on competition. It is how they, everything. We've worked with districts where competition is how their whole district moves forward. There are incentives for schools to beat each other and get better in attendance. And everyone from the board to the superintendent to the classroom teacher, they all love that competition. It is how they survive. Everything is like, my school is in first place for attendance. Oh no, I got to beat that person. I got to get better. That's how they function. Other districts, they decide none of us is free until all of us are free, right? None of us can move forward until all of us move together as a whole. We heard people sort of telling us both, oh, we can't move forward unless all of us move forward. Everyone has to be in this together. And we heard people like, no, there can only be one winner. And so the question for you really is, what takes precedence? There's no right or wrong with any of these, right? Like I will do my best to share them in a way that doesn't lead you, because it's your district. What do you want the culture to feel like? How do you define success? Is it about which is the best campus, which is the best teacher? Or is it about we all move forward and, there is no best. It's about all of us moving forward together. Is there a unifying force? Are there hidden incentives that reinforce this competitive nature? And how is it serving you? So again, this was one of the value tensions. I'll read through all of them, and then we're going to pause on one or two of them that I really would like, that I would suggest the board sort of do some discussion and soul searching around. Decision-making was another value tension. Where is the line between autonomy and sort of collective decision-making? So whose voice or whose decision is the final decision? Is it the community? Is it the students? Is it the staff? And there is no wrong. There is no wrong in this. But who is your primary driving force? Is it the voice of this community? Is it the voice of the students? Is it the voice of the staff? And who has what kind of decision-making rights? We found a lot of times where it was really unclear. Is this a board decision? Is this a superintendent decision? Is this a teacher decision? It just was unclear. And I think in order for you to move forward, there needs to be some role clarity around what are the levels of decisions that need to be made by this group sitting in front of me, what decisions are made by the people sort of on the sides here, and what decisions are happening in the classroom or in the community. And really figuring out what is the most sensible and effective way for communicating those decisions, and at what point do you find win-wins for everybody, but really being clear about what decisions live where and empowering that decision making. And I think especially if you're going through a superintendent search, that person has clarity. Well, what do they want me to decide? What have they decided already? And just naming that. The third one was not surprising, because you asked us to come and shake some things up and figure out how to reimagine school. And so there was a lot of tension around innovation versus tradition. When we played with ideas of what the future could look like, we often got the answer, but it's always been like that. Or when I was a kid, this is how it was. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some districts, some schools, you see this often in Catholic schools, right? Or in like religious schools, there's like a tradition, and this is how we always do it. And those schools are really successful. And then you see the opposite end, you usually see like charter schools. This is how we're innovating. This is how we're doing it new and different. The question is, where does Oroville Union High School District sit? Are you on the tradition side? Are you on the innovation side? Because this is one of those, if you sit right in the middle, you're not moving, right? If you're sort of like, it's both, like one leg in both, you're not going to be able to move forward. And so again, there is no right or wrong. There's just your way, your decision of which one of these comes first. Doesn't mean you can't have any traditions, doesn't mean you can't have any innovation, but one of them has to be the driver, right? One of them, like if there's a one lane road, one of them has to go in front of the other one in order for things to move forward. Yeah, of course. And it's not impossible. And when we talk to people, their worry was always, well, but if we make this change, some people might leave. And I think as we talk to people who come to your schools or who live in the community and choose not to come to your schools. And the thing is, people will make a choice no matter what, right? One of the trends we currently see in education is that there's a lot of mobility. Families are making various choices for their children. You have a more I don't know, more educated consumer, a more picky consumer, a more informed consumer. Families make choices. I think there's a lot more options too. And how can you be clear, right? How can you be clear to your stakeholders, to your community partners? This is why you would choose us, so that people are saying, I'm choosing Oroville because they have a great line of tradition, or I'm choosing Oroville because they've got great innovative programs. Whatever it is, I think there's a lack of clarity around which of these are driving your work. And I think as a board and as cabinet, I think there just needs to be a clear communication. We're committing to innovation, and we will try to preserve some of the great traditions, but this is our commitment to innovation. And I said I wasn't going to give you my opinion. So for argument's sake, you could say we're committing to tradition, and we might try to dabble with innovation, right? But again, that tension, right now it's just a tug of war and nobody's moving forward. So how do you choose one thing and move forward with it?
Another example, like, talk about mobility. I knew what school I was going to when I was in fourth grade.
Mhm.
Yeah, I grew up there. It's
Mhm.
just, that's the way it was. Now people can drive to Chico
Yeah.
or Durham, whatever. The other thing is, we talk about tradition, and innovation. One of the examples we talked about this for the last few years, combining the schools.
Mhm.
Okay, there's a group of people that remember the 1950s when Oroville dominated sports, in all sports, from San Francisco to Oregon border. They totally against combining schools because of the Oroville tradition.
Mhm.
You have the younger people, oh yeah, let's do it. This is good for our town. So there's two different things. One's based on, like you said, tradition. The other one is, let's do this so we can become something new.
Yeah.
Another thing I saw happening was, like, I also grew up here, and you really didn't think about where you went to high school because you went to high school in the area that you were in
Yeah.
when Los Pumas started. But now, with the fact that you can choose either high school,
Mhm.
I think that sets a stream so that all of a sudden people will choose one high school over the other.
Mhm.
And I believe that's what's happening. And so now it seems to me personally that people are choosing to go to Los Pumas. Okay?
Yeah.
And because we've lost sort of some of our student population in a way,
Mhm.
because people do choose to go out of town and everything, we don't really have enough students in a way, and I don't know what else to say about that, for the two high schools and for the two high schools in sports. So now the way things are with the population and the choice, it just stands to reason that people would choose one high school or the other because they don't have to go to a good school.
Yeah.
And this is the first year with our eighth graders coming up. So we developed what school they're known for. That went out with their transportation. So look and say, oh, this school has this, this other school has totally different things. To help them make a choice of where they want to go. And I think with Kristen and Orville starting so many new programs, I think eventually that's going to attract some people to go back to Orville way.
Yes, I think there was some comments based on that. They didn't like the school form.
And that's another problem.
Was that some of the parents' comments?
Yeah, I think it was in terms of the staffing came up, something around science staffing. Does any of this, do you remember the Corey? Like, can I take, it was about course access. Like, I feel like if I want access to this course, I have to go here. And I want to look back at my notes to be really clear because I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but they did feel like this is, and most of the time it was just grass is greener on the other side. Like, this is the good school, or this is where the fights happen. This is where the good teachers are. So it wasn't programmatically. There was one thing around a science teacher that came up. Like, is there a certain access to a certain science class? But other than that, it was really both schools. When I talked to parents and students at both Oroville and Las Plumas, when I talked to the Oroville parents, they said, oh, Las Plumas, so many fights. And when I talked to the Las Plumas parents, they said, oh, Oroville, so many fights. And I thought, isn't that interesting? And I said, oh, so I sort of instigate a little bit. And I asked, and I said, oh, so like, does the other campus have more problems than your campus? Oh, absolutely. The other campus, so many more problems. So I think it's just a lack of I really think it's like the grass is greener on the other side. Like there was always this like, well, that's happening over there, or that's happening over here. So
And that's why I believe that it would be so good to jumble it up in some way and give kids more access to classes that both campuses somehow combine them as is not in a real combination, but in some way would be, I think, healthier for the whole campus.
maybe yes, maybe no. I think there's arguments to be made for both, right? And I think before you can make that
And
decision,
I'm not talking about necessarily combining,
Mhm.
but, you know, so that kids can take
Mhm.
classes they want.
Mhm.
Maybe if it's better at science at one school, they can take, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just something.
And I think that's where, the operationalizing, the coming up with a plan on how to move this work forward comes in. And I'll also say that unless you sort of eliminate some of these tensions and just kind of say, oh, well, both of these things are important, but this thing is more important, right? Like, oh, tradition and innovation, they're both really important. But right now, we're going to focus in this area. It doesn't mean that at a future time, you can't say, you know what, we focused on innovation for a really long time. We want to bring back some traditions. So it's not a forever decision, but it is a clearly like we're all in agreement. And I think it is we're all in agreement kind of thing, right? This is not something where you're like, well, we should vote. And okay, well, 3-2, okay, the motion passes. This really is like, as a board, as a collective, as a team, this is how we want to, like, we right now all believe that innovation is important. And I think it's one of those where you sit and you talk it through until you get some clarity around which is the driver. Another piece that came around was identity and excellence. There was a lot of tension around identity and excellence. What are we known for? What are we really good at? And what do we want to try to be really good at? And some people said, you know what we really need to work on being better at? What really needs attention is athletics. And then some people said, no. What really needs attention is academics. We really need to get better at academics. And then another constituency said, no. What we really need to get really good at is career. We want to create more vocational programs. And again, I'm not saying don't do one of these, but be clear amongst yourselves which one is your number one priority, which one is your number two priority, and which one is your number three priority. And again, we're happy to come back and help you have those conversations. These can be sticky conversations, but you have to be clear. You can't say, well, they're all really important. It just depends on the day. Like Friday, it's football, and like Monday, it's academics. Like, which comes first as an organization? There was a lot of people frustrated about too much of some program getting in the way of other important things. So, give you an example. Somebody said, well, the agriculture schedule is getting in the way of athletics. It was just a comment that was made. I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong. But there wasn't anyone who could say, oh, well, that is because our vocational program is more important than our sports program. And I think there's people just that coming out of my mouth would be like, oh, you said what, Nicole? Like, that can't be it. So again, and I'm not saying it is or it isn't, or that it should or shouldn't be, but amongst leadership, board leadership, district leadership, school leadership, people should be really clear about saying, we need to reprioritize, or we only have X amount of money to do something. What's the most important thing to fund first? And I think even at that level, people would have a hard time saying, well, of course we're going to fund letter A first, because letter B can wait. And so getting clear around what should drive decisions.
So
Yeah.
Are you saying like have a develop a plan and let enrollment go where it may, instead of trying to please everybody, and then we don't have any direction? Is that kind of?
Yeah, and I would even say that there's people who have left your district for all three of these things. There's people who have left because they said athletics is not good enough, or academics not good enough, or not enough vocational programs. And I think if you said we want to be, I'm just making something up, we want to be the premier vocational program in Butte County. We're going to have all the voc ed programs, and we are working to attract students to come to our state-of-the-art, world-class vocational programs, you would attract families and you would lose families. I think no matter which one you choose, you're going to lose people and you're going to attract people. I think right now people don't really know why they're leaving or why they're coming. They're sort of like, it's just where I live. It's where I've always gone. It's, you know, I've known I was going to come here since 4th grade. And if you want to make changes, I think you just need to be clear about why would you, 5 years from now, how do you want people to talk about you and why do you want them to choose you? And any of these are perfectly fine. I've worked with schools, their whole recruitment strategy is around athletics, and they run amazing programs, and they have been able to improve all other programs because their athletics is so great. That is a strategy. There are schools that say, we want to have the students with most AP class offerings. We're going to offer most AP classes and college classes, and that is what's going to drive our program and bring people back. Or, you know, we're going to have a state-of-the-art STEM lab or auto shop lab, whatever it might be, right? Like any of these could be your thing. You just need to say which one comes first and not eliminate the others, but say this is the one that is most important right now. Not forever, but at least for the next couple of years. What's the driver?
In your communications with groups and individuals and everything, would the closest thing to being exemplary, for lack of a better word, in our district be the ag program at Las Vegas?
It depends on who you ask. I think it definitely came up as a really clearly defined program that people were proud of. I think it was something that was easy for folks to go, we have this program and it's really good. But I would say there was also arts programs at Oroville that came up and that people talked about in a similar fashion. But also the topic also came up, wow, like auto shop, that's really great. But some of the kids who would do really well in that program can't get into that program because they don't have the grades or the credits. I don't know all the details of it in order to get into that program. And again, the message I heard in that is we prioritize academics over vocational. These kids didn't have the grades, so they didn't get to go to the vocational program. Not a wrong decision, but it's a decision. But I think people would agree or disagree with that. My hope in bringing this up is that moving forward, everybody could go, oh yeah, of course that was the decision. And it was the right decision because at OUHSD, we prioritize academics. Therefore, these kids didn't get to go to the vocational program. Or you might say, no, vocation is really important. It's how we engage kids. It's how we draw kids in. It's how we help them care about something enough in order to get their grades up. So we're going to send them to the auto shop program. No right or wrong. It just needs to be one unifying voice and decision.
Is it possible to have academies, athletic academies, academic academies, vocational academies, all in one?
My opinion, or can I give you my opinion? Because I don't actually know. Is it, because anything is, I suppose anything is possible. I think the challenge would be, Nicole's opinion, that if you have an athletic academy, you are a school district that has made a commitment to educate children. So if your purpose is to create athletes, then you're not creating scholars, right? And so I don't think you could, so because of that, could you have an athletics academy? I mean, if it were like a physical, what is that, medical, physical, I'm not a sports person. What are those people that do sports and sports medicine? Thank you. You know, so if you had a sports medicine academy, I could see that being a career path. I couldn't see sports as being like an academy because it would be void of the thing that all of us committed to, right? Which is giving kids a great education. You said, though, sports was one of them, and then you said vocation. I mean, I think academics and vocation are really closely knitted together in academies like sports medicine, right? Like clearly, if you want to do sports medicine, that is a job, that is a career path, but it's also highly academic. Like nobody is going to be able to do anything with medicine unless you've got the grades. So my suggestion on this one would be if wondering about like academics versus vocations, there are some like tightly knitted programs that could like tick both boxes. So if that is like the hard piece, you can combine those. I feel like athletics, unless it's your recruiting strategy and that is where you're putting all your chips, I don't know that it could play equal value. When I've seen academies work really well, they cohort students in such a way that students are really well known by teachers. So like a group of teachers all work with the same group. It doesn't mean that you can't have any classes outside of your academy, right? But it's not just, it's a core focus that weaves into your English, that weaves into your core curricular. Mesa School District in Arizona is doing beautiful work around this. And they said, you know, every kid in our district is going to be known by name and by strength. And they have figured out what kids' strengths are and what their passions are and how to get them in the right programs. But really, the teachers have all kind of formed little pods, if you will, and students are within those pods. For Mesa, it's a larger school district, Mesa, Arizona. There's some other, I want to say Pasadena has done similar work. There's a few. There's a whole website on the Department of Education, California Department of Education, that has information around career technical pathways and academies. I know that Corey's really familiar too with the CTIC funding and the career and technical education and resources that are available. So that definitely is a pathway, and there are many exemplars and examples and even programs that could supplement that. It's a great question. What is an academy? So an academy is usually a field of study that students are cohorted through. And so if a student is part of an academy, they would take the majority of their courses with the same peers and in the same focus of study. So let's say,
Are we talking about like the agricultural area or classes at Wasuma? Yeah. Because that's a lot of classes. I mean, that would be hard to do another academy like that, wouldn't it?
so each kid, most of the schools that go to full academies, every student selects a pathway, selects a path of study. And so every kid would have an opportunity to look at English through the lens of the arts, right? Or every student has the opportunity to look at history through the lens of STEM. And so it's just as we get to the point where we operationalize these things, like there's a lot of embedding and kind of doing co-curricular, right? Bringing two subjects together to really speak to students' passions. There's a couple more, and I know that, no, it's perfect, Bonnie. I really appreciate it. It's something that I'm really excited about. I'm policing my own talk time because I'm going to chit chat all about it. So there's two more. There is future. Are we preparing students for college or career? Obviously, the answer is we want students to have both as an option. But remember, this is a value tension. So the tug of war, right? Like if we're going down like a one lane street, who's driving in the front and who's driving behind? Is college the primary driver, or is career the primary driver? And what are the synergies between the two, right? Like what are the opportunities to combine both, and how can you share with the community, and how can you also align your mission to not be and or? You know, what's the, or maybe it is and or. Like, would you be happy if a student graduated, and there's no right or wrong answer, right? Like, this is just for you to answer in your mind. Is it acceptable to those in the room for a student to graduate and not have had any career and future job experiences? Is it acceptable for a student to graduate and not have any opportunities to be able to go to college? And not saying that there are exceptions, right? There's always that you can say, well, this one student one time, but for most of your students, is it okay for students to graduate and not have opportunities to go get into college? Is it okay for students to graduate as your vision for what is best for students to not have any career experiences? And if you had to choose between one or the other, what's the driving force? What is the most critical one? And I'm not saying choose only one, but which one's more important? If you had to choose, what would you push for first? I mean, for your district, your students. Mhm. And how do you feel about that data? And I think, but that's the current data, right? Like, ideally, 10 years from now, what do you want those numbers to look like? And how is that reflected?
My vision was always been like, there were kids who were going to want to go to college and go on future into careers
Mhm.
that follow college, and there are those that have no interest in that.
Mhm.
They want to just go right into the workforce and have a
Mhm.
career. And I think that all of our kids should recognize their strengths and which pathways they
Mhm.
want to go on early on, so that we can make sure that we tailor
Mhm.
their pathways to the direction they need to go. And if they're going to be a graduate, go either way,
Yeah.
they should have these types of skills, and they should follow these skills should help them in either of those paths.
Mhm.
So, I know it's kind of an either or probably.
Well, and it's fine, but do you, well, this is a rhetorical question, right? But would everybody agree with that? Like, are we really, and how intentionally are we ensuring that we don't choose paths for kids based on what we think they might want when they're ninth graders? And do we really know, right? And so,
No, I agree, giving them a bunch of opportunities,
yeah.
so that they know, like, I'm sure a lot of them come in and have no clue that there's all these other job possibilities out there, so.
That's one of those questions that you asked earlier about, the question I'm thinking like, these kids don't know. If
Mhm.
their parents are educators,
Mhm.
they're probably more likely to want to go to college. Their parents will provide the education. Maybe they don't know that till later. They're never going to get everybody. Seems like.
Well, and you're a small district with limited resources, right? Like, what are the minimum things that every student should experience, right? Is the minimum that every kid does what's called the A through G, right? Like those courses so that they have a choice? Or is that too high of a bar? Is that too low of a bar? Is the minimum that every student is enrolled in at least one career class? Is the minimum, right? And just getting clear around like, well, what is our expectation? Like,
But then there's the classes that you statewide have to take,
mhm,
right? So then by the time you put those in,
mhm.
where's the room really for these pathways?
So the easy answer, which is not a practical one, right? Like the easy answer is that you can embed those pathways in those courses and right, like that's where academies come in. It's like, how do you make your English class also a drama and spoken word class? Or how do you make your history class an art history class, right? Like there are ways to do that, and it's always easier said than done to operationalize that on the academic side of the house. I know it takes a lot of scheduling magic, and so I don't want to make it sound really easy. You know, it's like, oh, yeah, like you'll have that done in an hour, right? Before the meeting's over. It'll be scheduled. But it's just getting that clarity, because when we spoke, and again, this came out of value tensions when we spoke to people, where people clearly told us, well, kids don't need to go to college. We just need to prepare them for a career. Or people said, well, if we're not preparing them for college, what are we doing? So I'm just pointing out the disagreement that existed and the conversations that need to happen. This,
Well, I think we, yeah, and we kind of know all that. It's how
which one do you choose?
help to do this whole thing.
Mhm.
I know. Look. So,
So this is the last value tension. That's the good news. This is the last one. And then it's this like current status versus aspiration versus capacity. Like, which way do we go? Like, there's a tension between which way do we go? And everybody's like, I don't know. Let's just stop. Let's not move. Somebody's going to tell us which way to go. And like, we don't want to make people mad, right? Like that also came up. Like, well, if we choose one of these things, somebody's going to get upset. And so maybe we should choose all the things. No, maybe we should choose nothing, right? Like it was this back and forth, like choose all the things and choose nothing. And that I think was like the biggest takeaway for us was how do you set a clear charge for educators so that they're not spread too thin? So that when they're going, I can't fit it all into one day, they can say, but I know this is the most important thing. I know that at Oroville Union High School District, this is the number one thing. This is our rallying call. And how do you let go of programs that no longer serve students or that no longer prepare students to the future? And how are you okay with the fact that people will be mad? No matter what you choose, somebody's going to get mad. But remember, if you stand in the middle of the road, you're going to get run over both ways. So, they all fit together somehow, right? Like, but how do we not, when somebody goes, oh, I heard Chico's doing something. Oh, we should do that too. So kids don't leave. Or I heard Paradise has this thing. Oh, let's do that too so people don't leave. Well, you're adding things, but my wondering would be, are you able to do them at a high quality level? And are you burning out capacity? And I'll be the first one to be like, I want you to be aspirational. I want you to say like, we want to do that thing. That sounds really exciting. And like, how many things can you realistic take on before your staff quit or families leave because it's not good enough? So how do you get clear and how do you really embrace excellence? How do you choose fewer things but do them really well? What?
Wide more often than deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that is. I mean, that's spread too thin.
And it's written in your mission statement too that you wanted to have lots and lots and lots of options. It's not exactly how your mission statement reads. You know your mission statement, but it gave this impression of we want kids to have lots of experiences. And is that what you want? And if so, great. Or do you want to go really deep and offer them less choices? My suggestion to you would be for this board to really dig into the decision making, who makes what decisions, and the piece around direction. How deep do you want to go? How wide do you want to spread yourself? And really look at those two and have some conversations as a board. Where do we stand on this? Who makes what decisions? My hunch is that the other 4 value tensions, you would be best served to have staff recommendation, to have staff say, here's what we recommend in terms of academic programs. Here's what we recommend in terms of vocational programs, right? Because that is their expertise. They know how to run schools, run districts, run the finances to make it all come together, right? Like, so rely on your staff for the other 4, but as a board, really commit to tackling the other 2, the decision making and the direction. Because the more clarity you have, the easier it will be to move forward. And I can give you my opinion. I mean, these 2 gentlemen know, like, I'm not shy when they say, well, which one do you think? And this is my opinion. And you're experts in your community. I did not grow up here. I did not know in 4th grade which high school I was going to go to in Oroville. And I don't know what it feels like to win the bell or not win. It is the bell though, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Right. So like, I'm not from here, so I can give you my opinion, but you know, it's just my opinion. But let's dig in. We can talk about one of these value decisions, just so you know, moving forward. We're going to finalize the portrait of a graduate tomorrow with staff and ask them, what should experiences look like for students if this is what we want? Like, if this is how we want students to be in the future, what are the changes that need to happen in the classroom, on campus, and what's the support that teachers and staff need to make that happen? So that is happening moving forward, and then we're going to figure out the strategies to get there. But I'm all yours. I'm happy to keep talking. I'm happy to be quiet and listen to you. I'm happy to render my opinion on any of these topics. But that is my suggestion.
I just have this big blank in the middle of how to get stuff done, you know? I mean, what teachers, what do you ask the teachers? Like, okay, these are teachers in this department, which classes do you think are the most important? Or, I mean, I don't really understand how to get from here to here at all.
And the great news, right? Like, that piece, the board doesn't have to know how to do, because you've got really competent and really smart leaders. Like, you've got amazing staff. You've got phenomenal teachers. I spent the morning with them several days, right? Like, they're really smart. They know how to do this stuff. I think what staff needs from you and what they can't do is to help prioritize and sort of say, like, this is our mission and here's what we're doubling down on. Or, you know, if somebody disagrees with this decision, I will have your back, because this is what we value as an entire district and entire community. So I think what they need from you isn't to worry about how do you stack the master schedule. They need you to say, you know what? I think the most important thing is X. And if somebody pushes back, I'll have your back, because this is our value. It's some clarity around those value tensions, because again, you've got great people. You really, truly do. I see a lot of districts, and like, you've got a great team all the way, you know, all the way across.
Do most districts go the less is more route? You know, fewer things, do them well. I mean, I've never been a person that likes to do everything a little bit. And I'm not sure we're doing kids a favor if we just do things a little bit.
I think most successful organizations, schools or otherwise, are really clear about what they offer.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard when you're a school, because you, especially school board members, right? Like, I've sat in your seat, because as soon as you make a decision, there will always be somebody who has a different opinion.
Oh, always. Yeah.
Right? And that's hard. It is really,
That's
like, that is not, it's not easy.
That's life. I mean,
Smaller town, probably harder.
Yeah. And people are going to, you know, as soon as you pick one of these things, you're going to doubt yourself, because your neighbor's going to have something.
No
Or
matter what, you're
Yeah.
gonna have two sides.
There's a lot of things that I mean, I'm guilty of, in the sense that I'll ask certain people for information.
Mhm.
They already have their job to do. Now I got them on a wild goose hunt. You know, that's that right there. It's wrong. You know, so so the clarity in that, you know, just being more, I guess, organized as a board, just what we, you know, not that we have to all agree, but we just know what we agreed to. Just being clear about it.
But
So
we're trying to
So
figure out
we
what we're
suggest
clear
a board
about.
study. I agree with your suggestion.
right, like, getting clear around how are, like, where are they showing up? How do you communicate things more clearly? And then where do you stand on decision making? Right? Like, is this board clear about what decisions you all have to make versus what decisions your leadership team has to make? And if you hash it out, would people be like, oh wait, I thought we're supposed to do that? Oh wait, no. And would staff say the same thing? Ray, you were in a meeting where I was, I have opinions and I'm not afraid to share them, and I have no problems calling them out, right? But like, there seems to be a Ray, how do I say it? Ray, you're good with words. Help me out. Scope creep. In consulting, we call it scope creep. So where, people have opinions, and then all of a sudden their opinions become decisions, and maybe it wasn't their decision to make. And people kind of get ahead of those. So like, I would say, is it clear when your academic team makes a decision, or are sometimes your suggestions decisions, right? Does this board sometimes make decisions that are not in their wheelhouse? And right, like, and how do you just like get clear around that? And I think it comes from a good place. It comes because like, you don't get paid to sit here. It's 7 o'clock. You have other things to do, and like, yet you're here because you care about the community, and you want what's best. And how do you get clarity around like, oh, when this comes up, that's not my job. I'm going to throw it over to John, or I'm going to throw it over to Susan, or I'm going to throw it over to Corey. And vice versa. Like, when something comes up, is there a clear, like, as a former superintendent, I would make suggestions to my board, right? Like, on motions. And are the suggestions that you're making, sometimes they're more than suggestions. Like, as an educator, this is what I suggest we do. And you can always push back on that, right? Like, you are in this seat because the community trusts you to represent their interests and represent all the children in your district. And at what point, when do you need to make a decision, and when do you kind of throw it back to the team?
And there are different perceptions out in the community
Yes.
about who's making the decisions.
Mhm.
Because we all, I do, I know Scott gets.
And people try to split you. I talk to people who are like, oh, but if I can't get it from mom, I go to dad.
Yeah, and they call us with questions and things that they want us to do that they're not our business to do. I mean, most of the calls I get, I would have to refer people back to their site.
And it's really tempting sometimes not to. You're like, well, how hard can that be? Like, let me just call up Corey. Corey, like, this came up. I need you to do this.
Yeah. Or I tell Corey, and Corey's been really great about.
I didn't promise anything. I just said I'll get to Corey.
Yeah. But it's hard when you don't know what the agreed value is.
All levels, people need to learn how to stand their own language.
But I think
Not to give you that thought, but I mean, all levels.
there's a difference though, because I'm not trying to justify it, but the motivation is to help.
Absolutely.
It's not like
100%.
we're not doing it to be volunteer.
You guys, but I mean, like, down the
No,
line.
us too. But if they're not ill, it's not directly in an ill way. Did I hear you earlier say you would come work with the board?
Absolutely.
Can we agree on that?
I agree, for sure. Because we don't really know where we're headed.
Well, there's certain things that I've always understood. We have one employee, that's Corey,
Right,
Mhm.
right.
but I'm not sure how well it's done.
I think for a lot of years, you guys have really worked on it. There's a lot of training you guys get to know how to maybe do your jobs better about relationships. And I think this is really a lot of that too. But see, if we're in essence trying to decide what's good for the district and what pathways or whatever you take, that's hard to know when you really don't know anything about the town. So I've been trying to learn about the CTE courses since I was 15, 18, that boards would want to go in that way. I don't know. And I know nothing about it. And so how would I ever have any input on it if I didn't know more about it?
Yeah, I mean, Ray and I have had this conversation before, and we both agree, if we're the smartest people involved, then we're in trouble.
Yeah.
So to have
Right.
have more information,
Yeah.
professionals, I've always looked at Corey, he's an educational professional. I'm not.
And he sees other schools. He goes to conferences. He talks to other people, right? And so And I absolutely hear Bonnie too. It's like, that's a heavy burden. Like when you feel like, how do I make an informed decision about this when I don't,
know anything about
if I don't know enough, right? And that is when you get a recommendation, right? You can say like, hey staff, like what would be your recommendation we do? And then, you know, you can study that and learn more. Cause I think it's really hard to start from scratch and say like, I'm just going to start learning everything versus like, hey John, like, can you come to the board meeting and give us a presentation on academies? Or, hey Corey, if we did academies, like what 6 academies do you think would be best? And then you can choose 4, right? But how do you not,
No, we've been waiting for you to tell us.
hold on, this was the last 6 months of work. It was a lot of work to just get to this point. I'm happy to render my,
Than we've ever been.
sorry?
I say we're miles ahead of where we've ever been.
Well, and tomorrow, right? Like, remember that tomorrow what we're doing is we're meeting with teachers. We're going over this and we're saying, like, what do you think kids need? If this is the outcome that we're trying to reach, what do students need? And then we're going to debrief and we're going to meet with Corey and with John. I think, Ray, you're part of that steering committee. All your site leaders will be there. And we're going to say, okay, we heard a lot of things. Like, what is our recommendation? How do we move forward? How do we get from right now to right here, right? Like, how do we cover this, and how do we come back to you with a suggestion, with right next steps? And so I didn't mean to like bury the lead at all by not having those suggestions, but right, like, but if you're saying, yeah, that portrait of a graduate looks right, then our job as educators now is like, how do we do that? How do we get there, and how do we present you with some options? But in order to do that, we need to hear from you that, like, yes, decision making, like, that's what we want you to do. Your job is to come back with a suggestion that we can support. Or, you know, our commitment to you is to do fewer things, but do them well. Or our primary directive to you is we want as many programs to give students a wealth of experiences. Those are the things that we need from you, right? Like, we need clarity on those 2 value tensions. And we have a handout of those as well that we can email to everybody, right? The value tensions 1-pagers. Like, that is what we need from you so that when we work with staff, we go, okay, the board said fewer things with more depth, or the board said more experiences, but with less depth. That's kind of one decision point, right? And the other decision point is decision-making power. Like, we will approve the mission, the vision, and the graduate profile. We want you all to come to us with suggestions and make decisions about these other value tensions. So those are the only 2 things you need to worry about right now is the direction and decision-making clarity. My suggestion. You have to be a little bolder. I'm sorry. But I think those are the 2 most critical things for this board to decide so that staff then can say, okay, we're going to come up with a plan for you. Doesn't mean that they're going to go rogue on you, but they're going to come back and say, we talked about the other 4 value tensions, and here's what we recommend to you.
Everybody else has been heard.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of lines they have left.
Absolutely.
If they're on everything that we say on campus, we're gonna work.
Yeah, my suggestion to you would be to direct staff to give you some clarity around the other 4 value tensions, and for you all to cut your teeth on those 2, or maybe you just want to choose one. That's completely your decision. I can go back to those slides. But if I were sitting on that side, I would think, okay, I want to direct staff to make a recommendation. Come back at the next board meeting, make a recommendation what you think is the right place to land on these value tensions based on all the data you have. And you can say we agree or disagree. Doesn't mean that you have to, you know, go with what they're saying. But to remind you, right, you would then say, you know, staff, we want you to come up with defining whether success is collective or individualistic. Come back to us and work through it and come up with a plan. You all would do some work around decision making. Who owns what decisions? And again, I'm happy to help. I don't want you to feel like you're alone in this. You would direct staff to make a recommendation around innovation versus tradition, and how those two would move forward. Athletics, academics, and vocation, like what's in the front of the train, what's in the caboose, if you will. Like the whole train's going to move forward, won't leave anything at the station, but kind of what goes where. And talk through some of these. And again, these won't be, they're not easy, they're not overnight decisions, but to sort of empower them to give you some suggestions around college versus career, these academies. And you look at capacity and how much you want them to hold or let go of. There's lots.
For the staff that want HC value in surveys, a lot of people don't want to see that. But they will talk why they.
So I don't know that it's a survey kind of topic about whether our culture, right, is about collective or individualistic success. I feel like that's a leadership direction that needs to happen at the cabinet level. And it's sort of Corey's decision, in my opinion. Again, this is Nicole's opinion. Whether Corey includes the entire leadership team or just John or reflects quietly while climbing a mountain, like I don't know his process, but I feel like that would, I don't know that I would send that out as a survey to everyone because I think it's a leadership decision. I think, you know, how do we define success? How do I create the culture in our organization? Like, my opinion. I think it's too hard and thorny of a topic. And we have 1,000 people answered this survey. We've talked to so many people. I feel like we can probably glean some direction based on what people already told us. Would be my guess.
But you're saying on the value tensions, that's staff, right? Make those decisions.
I think there are 2 value tensions that I think are yours.
A and B. Clarity.
A and B, correct. My suggestion is you hold those 2, and maybe you want to include your cabinet in those discussions and what they think. But I feel like a large part of that lives with you, and the other ones live with the rest of the team. And I don't know, Corey and John, you guys were, I may have been more succinct or clear the last time we talked about this. So please add to, you've had also some time to digest this.
No, I think this is a start, and we thought that the board would be better for this, and then staff. We start with staff with the other value tensions, and we're going to try to do some of that work tomorrow with the staff. So,
And I think we would like your help with the board.
Happy to. We'll carve out I was going to say a few hours, and I was worried that would sound scary to all of you. But somewhere between 2 to 4 hours to really kind of scratch beyond the surface of decision making and kind of who makes what decisions and, you know, how do we do this work well? And I don't know which search firm you're working with, but most search firms also provide board training as well. So I want to make sure I mention that they also may have workshops around that. But yeah, I'm happy to. I think it just takes time, right? You need to get messy. You need to like talk it out in a way that isn't as sort of formal and one directional. Because I feel like all of you need to be heard, and we need to kick through like all the what ifs and how abouts and decision making, like talking through scenarios. Well, if this happened, how do we work through that? This has been a lot of information. We're going to make sure Paula can you make sure they get the slides so that they can read over them again and like digest?
Okay? And I would prefer Nicole. Pardon me? Just a suggestion, but I would prefer Nicole work for.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to make a decision.
Well, and it really is a continuation of this work, right? You still may want to use them for other trainings. What I heard you say is like, hey, these specific topics, can you help us with? This was a lot.
Clear as mud.
I know. I expected nothing else. It like really, truly, it's supposed to feel really muddy right now because everything that was in our brain and our spreadsheets and like everything we heard, you now have heard an abbreviated version of it. I know it didn't feel abbreviated. I'm sorry, but I promise you this was the very abbreviated version of it. And I think like moving forward now, it's about getting suggestions to come back to you around how to address these tensions, around how to make this Portrait of a Graduate come alive.
That makes really good sense to me.
Good.
And I, just knowing the staff, I would think they would appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
You got this one.
I'm trying to make it go away. No such luck. I'm breaking it. Sorry. Oh, stop touching it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh.
Have a really great evening. I'll be around all day tomorrow.
Okay, recognition of individuals who wish to speak on non-agenda items. Let's close. Before new business resolution, the intention to eliminate classified positions.
So we have an issue at our adult transition center is we could be facing a possibility. We have a legal team working on whether students that have a diploma are eligible for adult transition center services. And we're working to develop a policy and procedure for that. If that decision in the next couple weeks says that we can't serve students that are eligible for a high school diploma, they can't go there, we won't need so many classified staff. And by law, we have to notice staff that they may be reduced or laid off by March 15th. So we are asking the district to seek approval to eliminate 4.0 FTE ATC instructional paraeducators and 1 FTE paraeducator 2 position. All positions are currently staffed through a contracted agency. We're recommending approval of a resolution number 10/22/23.
Do I have a motion for approval? Second. Comments and questions?
Where you're saying that until you find out that information, you won't know, and then you do that.
Then I have a decision that we can go and Susan, John, and I are working with staff to make sure that we have the proper staffing. One of the issues is one-on-one aides. And they usually travel with students. And we're not sure who's coming over from 8th grade to 9th grade yet because we haven't held those transition IEPs.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, personnel assignment order. Motion for approval. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Closed session. We will go to closed session to discuss personal government code 54957.